Hello, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, today I'll be making a painting of the house that owns room 6. It's part of a collaboration with Jinrin Marie. The playlist will be in my description, and so will her channel. An old ghost story from the Vale. Hollowford's room 6. On the edge of Hollowford, where the vale narrows and the woods creep close to the river, there stands a weather-beaten boarding house that the locals rarely mention by name. Most simply call it the House on Briar Lane. Its clapboard walls are grey with age, warped and crooked from decades of damp winters. The shutters hang unevenly, and the roofline sags in places, as if the house itself has grown weary of standing. At dusk, when the mist rolls in off the marshes, its silhouette seems larger than it ought to be, hulking and unnatural against the fading light. The garden is long abandoned, gone to nettles and thistles, with only a crooked iron gate left to hint that the place was ever cared for. The house has 2 floors and a half attic above, with a narrow window, some broken, some clouded with grime. Visitors say that no matter the time of day, the curtains in the upper right corner, 2nd floor, never seem to move. That is where room 6 lies. The legend of room 6. The tale of room 6 has passed down in Hollowford for more than a century. Old records tell of a young woman named Eliza Harrow, who stayed at the boarding house in the autumn of 1874. She was not local, but a traveller, said to have been on her way to meet her fiancé, who worked in the quarries further north. Eliza was described as polite and cheerful, with dark hair and a pale complexion that made her look almost fragile. One cold night in October, the landlady rented her room 6. Eliza was seen at the window that evening, unpacking her things by lamplight, but by morning she'd vanished. Her belongings remained neatly folded on the bed, her boots sat by the hearth, her shawl draped across the chair. The door had been locked from the inside, yet there was no trace of Eliza. The official word printed in the Hollowford Gazette was that she had left suddenly under personal distress. Though no witness had seen her leave, and no tracks were found in the mud outside, locals whispered otherwise. They said a scream was heard in the night, so sharp and chilling that those who lived nearby remembered it years later. They said the walls of room 6 were streaked with frost on the morning she disappeared, though no fire had gone out on the hearth. And some swore they saw her face, pale and sorrowful, in the window for weeks afterwards, long after the boarding house had been emptied of guests. The house today. The boarding house still stands, its timbers sagging, its paint longing since stripped by the weather. Children dare each other to throw stones at the windows. Teenagers whisper about climbing inside at night, yet most never do, for the stories persist. Visitors who linger near the gate claim the air grows colder there, even on warm evenings. Animals shy from the overgrown path, and even birds seem reluctant to perch on its roof. And always, always, there is that window, 2nd floor corner of room 6, where a pale shape sometimes lingers behind the curtain, though the house has been locked for decades. What happens inside room 6? Those few who have entered room 6 and spoken of it afterward, describe the same unsettling details. The room appears ordinary, if at first. Faded wallpaper with a curling floral pattern, a cracked mirror above the mantel, a narrow iron bedstead. Dust lies thick, but the air feels damp, as though the walls themselves weep. When the door closes, the sound changes. Footsteps seem muffled, voices sink as though swallowed. Several visitors reported that their lanterns burned low in that room, their flames shrinking to a faint blue glow. Matches sputtered, then candles refused to stay lit. But the most disturbing accounts are of the mirror. Though cracked, it still hangs above the mantel, and those who gaze too long swear it reflects not themselves, but the image of a woman standing just behind them. A woman with dark red hair and hollow eyes, her hands clasped tightly as if in prayer. She never moves, except to lift her head in the reflection, though when you turn, there is no one there. The room is not silent either. At first it's only the creak of the boards and the settling of the beams, but if one lingers, faint sounds emerge, dragging as of skirts across the floor. The rattle of a latch through the door does not stir, and sometimes, late at night, a thin, breathless sobbing. One man, a traveller who stayed in the house in the 1920s, before it was abandoned for good, claimed he woke to find the window open, though he had bolted it himself. Frost traced the inside of the glass, and standing before it was a figure in a white shifting, hair loose and dripping with water, as though she had just walked out of the river. He could not move. The figure turned her head slowly toward him, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came. Then the room went black. He left Hollowford the next morning, and he never returned. The curse of staying too long. The most persistent part of the legend is this: anyone who sleeps in room 6 and stays the night will dream the same dream. They dream of the house not as it is, but as it was, new, lively, with voices and lamplight spilling down the hall. They dream of footsteps climbing the stairs, of someone weeping softly in the corridor. They dream of a door opening slightly and slowly, with the sound of iron hinges. And then, they say, the dreamer will find themselves looking out of the window, gazing down at the garden below as though trapped inside the room. Sometimes, they claim, they see another version of themselves, standing in the yard, staring up. When the dream ends, the person always wakes with frost on their breath, no matter the season. Some never wake at all. The last sightings. In recent decades, locals still whisper of the pale woman who lingers at the window when the moon is bright. Drivers passing along Briar Lane have reported seeing her in the glass, one hand lifted as if pressed against the pane. No one dares enter now. The house is sealed, its floorboards rotted, its roof sagging. But the stories have not faded. Hollowford children grow up hearing warnings not to wander too close, not to linger in the garden, and never to look too long at the window of room 6. For they say the woman in the glass not only looks out, sometimes she looks in. The Hollowford haunting of room 6. The boarding house in Hollowford still stands at the edge of the moor, a skeletal husk with weathered boards and leaning eaves that seem to bow beneath the weight of decades. Its roof is patched but never whole, and shutters hang like half-closed eyes that refuse to sleep. The garden has long since gone wild, vines and nettles clawing at the sagging porch rail, as if it's the earth itself were trying to reclaim the place. To strangers, it is simply an old ruin. To locals, however, it is a place avoided, a house where whispers cling to the air and shadows seem thicker than they should be. The boarding house once welcomed travellers, merchants, drifters, even newlyweds, seeking a quiet countryside retreat, would rent its simple rooms. 5 of those rooms remain unremarkable, but the 6th, room 6, spread stories for more than a century. At first glance, there is nothing unusual about it. A small square of floorboards, a brass bed frame long since rusted, a warped wardrobe, peeling wallpaper that once bore a cheerful floral pattern. The only window peers over the moor, where the mist clings to the heather. But in this room, the visitors have felt the air grow suddenly cold, if the walls seem to almost breathe frost. Footsteps sound when no one is there, and sometimes, if one dares to linger after midnight, they hear the slow dragging sound of someone shifting beneath the bed. On one occasion, a guest described watching the reflection of the room in the glass of that single window, only to see a woman standing behind him, her eyes hollow, her mouth slightly open, as though forever caught between a sigh and a scream. When he turned, the room was empty. Another lodger claimed to wake in the dead of night to see a pale hand curl around the bedpost. It was not attached to a body. The hand tightened its grip until the iron groaned, and when the man screamed, the sound was swallowed. No one else in the house heard a thing. But perhaps the most chilling story is the one told by Thomas Weaver, a schoolmaster passing through in 1949. He reported that while he stayed in room 6, he dreamed of drowning. He saw a dark figure at the foot of his bed, its face obscured by shadow, its voice low, coaxing, "You belong here. Stay." When he awoke, he found bruises round his wrists, as though held down. Weaver left Hollowford the very next morning. He never returned. Locals began to say that room 6 did not merely harbour a ghost, it created them. A trap of sorts where the living and the dead overlap, and where those who spend too long within its walls risk becoming part of its fabric. The Ellery Curse. Now, the Ellery Curse is the story of room 6 cannot be told without the story of the Ellery family, who built the house in 1871. The Ellerys were not wealthy, but they were ambitious. Jonathan Ellery, the patriarch, was a stern man, with eyes that seemed too dark for his face. He built the boarding house to draw income from travellers, hoping to lift his family from obscurity. Yet within a year of opening, the family was plagued with tragedy. Jonathan's eldest daughter, Marianne, was found lifeless in her bed at 17, her expression one of sheer terror, and no cause of death was found. His wife soon fell into hysteria, claiming to see shadows moving along the walls, and by 1875 she was committed to an asylum. Jonathan pressed on, running the house with the surviving children, but the deaths continued. Guests would die inexplicably in their sleep. A young boy vanished entirely, last seen playing marbles in the upstairs hallway. Whispers spread that Jonathan had made some kind of arrangement, that prosperity demanded sacrifice. It was the village historian Edward Marsh who uncovered the darker layer in 1892, a pamphlet now housed in Hollowford's archives. Marsh suggested that Jonathan Ellery had been obsessed with old grimoires and tales of spirits bound to homes. One particularly persistent legend claimed Jonathan sought an entity from beyond the veil, a soul binder that would grant him full rooms and steady coin in exchange for the essence of those who stayed too long under his roof. According to Marsh's writing, the bargain was struck not with words, but with blood. A hidden symbol was carved into the beams above room 6. That room became the tether, the mouthpiece of the pact. The Ellery family prospered briefly. Guests came, rooms filled, money flowed. But the deaths mounted too, and in each case, the victim had spent at least one night in room 6. Jonathan himself was found dead in that room, 1881. His eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as if watching something crawl from the rafters. His remaining children fled Hollowford soon after that. The house passed into the care of distant relatives, then caretakers, then stood mostly empty, its reputation curdling into legend. The Demon of Room 6. In Hollowford folklore, the room is not merely haunted, it is said to be an extension of the Ellery curse, a chamber that feeds on fear and life itself. Some describe it as a demon's stomach swallowing those who cross its threshold. Others claim the Ellerys themselves remain there, damned to serve the bargain their patriarch has struck. Travellers still test it, young men daring one another to spend a night within. Skeptics bring lanterns and notebooks trying to debunk the tales. Few last until morning, and those who do often refuse to speak of what they experienced. One villager told Marsh that a guest once scratched a warning into the wardrobe door before fleeing. It waits when the moon is high. Do not answer when it calls your name. In closing, today the boarding house is more ruin than refuge. Yet the legend endures. Ask anyone in Hollowford, and they'll tell you. The house watches, and the room 6 waits. Whether the stories are invention, hysteria, or truth, no one can say with certainty. But those who study the Ellery family, like Marsh, conclude that something unnatural lingered there, and perhaps still does. And so the folklore of Hollowford persists. A warning whispered by mothers to their children when dusk falls over the moor. Never look too long at room 6's window, because sometimes it just looks back. So, if you got this far, thank you. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you to my watchers, my subscribers, my members, my likers and my commenters, and those of you who watch right till the very end. You are awesome. Awesome human beings. And I thank you. And I shall see you in the next one.
In a world of shadows, light does sing. Goth unicorn with a blackened wing. Happy she